All right, guys, so we have some official updates regarding the tragic incident out of Waukesha, right? And I hope I'm pronouncing the name of the town correctly. Wisconsin, right? The tragic event in which Mr. Darrell Brooks ran his SUV into a crowd of people during a Christmas parade, killing 5, most of whom appear to be elderly people, right? That town lost a whole lot of wisdom that day, okay, and injuring dozens of other people. Now, I did a video on this before, okay, earlier today when we had information about this stuff, but that wasn't necessarily with official information, right? That was more kind of speculation because at that point, the police had not officially released the identity of the suspect, okay? But now that has changed, and the police have provided an official account of what happened and the charges that the suspect will be facing. So without further ado, I actually want you guys to listen to the police chief of Waukesha discuss this situation, and then we will continue from there. Take a look.
And provide an update. At 4:39 p.m. on Sunday, November 21st, 2021, a lone subject intentionally drove his maroon SUV through barricades into a crowd of people that was celebrating the Waukesha Christmas parade, which resulted in killing 5 individuals and injuring 48 additional individuals. I just received information that 2 of the 48 are children and they're in critical condition. We have information that the suspect prior to the incident was involved in a domestic disturbance, which was just minutes prior, and the suspect left that scene just prior to our arrival to that domestic disturbance. When the suspect was driving through into the crowd, one officer did discharge his firearm and fired shots at the suspect to stop the threat, but due to the amount of people, had to stop and did not fire any other additional shots. The officer is on administrative leave as part of department protocol. No one was injured as a result of the officer firing his discharging his firearm. The subject was taken into custody a short distance from the scene, and we are confident he acted alone. There is no evidence that this is a terrorist incident. I want to identify the victims that we know of at this time. I say this with great sorrow. Virginia Sorensen, 79-year-old female. Leanna Owens, 71-year-old female. Tamara Durand, 52-year-old female. Jane Kulich, 52-year-old female. Wilhelm Hospital, 81-year-old male. The suspect involved in this tragic incident is identified as Darrell E. Brooks, male, 39 years of age, who is a resident of the city of Milwaukee. At this time, the Waukesha Police Department is referring 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with additional charges based on the investigation, but those will come in time. I want to dispel some rumors. There's no pursuit that led up to this incident. This is not a terrorist event.
All right, guys, so you see that, you heard that. The Waukesha police chief is basically saying that Mr. Darrell Brooks intentionally ran his vehicle into the crowd at the Christmas parade, right? As they're charging him with 5 counts of intentional first-degree homicide, right? Which means that he intentionally tried to kill people. He intentionally tried to do it, okay? Now, he also talked about how he wanted to dispel some myths, right? The first myth is that he was being pursued or chased, right? They kept saying that, well, you know, he was in a knife fight before all this, right? Which basically is implying that, well, you know, there's some excuse for why he was driving his vehicle so recklessly and ran it into all those people. When at the end of the day, even if he was in a knife fight, that is no excuse to drive your vehicle in a way that's so reckless and to kill people, right? So I don't even know why that even kept getting brought up in the first place, why that was even a relevant detail. It was never, ever really a relevant detail to me. But that's something that, in my opinion, I think the mainstream liberal media low-key tried to push to excuse this because the suspect in this situation isn't, a white male, right? So they're going to try to do everything they can to make an excuse out of this to try to, make it more fuzzy, right? For the layman not to really understand exactly what happened. Now, the part about what the police said that I kind of disagree with here, and I got a whole lot of questions about, is when he says that this wasn't an act of terrorism, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, if this is not terrorism, I don't know what is terrorism. Like, what do you define as terrorism if this is not terrorism? Because the FBI defines terrorism as, or domestic terrorism, as acts perpetrated by individuals or groups inspired by or associated with primarily U.S.-based movements that espouse extremist ideologies of political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. So that's what they define as domestic terrorism. And again, in my opinion, I feel like if this is not domestic terrorism, I don't know what is, because if you read the history of this suspect, right, this guy is a career criminal. He has terrorized his community and those close to him, right? The media will go all out of their way to accuse anybody associated with the right as a domestic terrorist. But when it comes to this guy, somebody that actually commits acts of violence, right? That's crickets, right? They want to quickly say, oh, it's not terrorism. But again, if you can't define this as terrorism, I don't know what is. But that's really what the focus of this video is. But without further ado, let's actually read a little bit more about this suspect and his history, because again, this right here is just absolutely insane how this person was even able to walk on the streets in the first place, right? It's kind of crazy. According to criminal record searches, Mr. Brooks was a longtime felon whose offending dated back to 1999. He has convictions for drug and firearm possession, strangulation, battery, and resisting arrest. Has been sentenced to 2 prison terms and spent years on probation and under court supervision. On November 2nd, Mr. Brooks was charged on domestic violence charges after he allegedly tried to run over the mother of his child. He was charged with recklessly endangering safety, felony, bail jumping, battery, obstructing an officer, and disorderly conduct. Brooks posted the $1,000 bond and was released on November 11th. Guys, can you believe this? This man tried to run over his mother, the child of his mother, and they gave him a $1,000 bond. Guys, this is progressive criminal justice in action. That's what it is. This is what it is, right? When they talk about bail reform, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about letting out violent criminals like this, people who are proven to be violent. And guys, I'm not even against, criminal justice reform, in a sense that, like, yeah, if you're non-violent or if you haven't proven to be violent, yeah, you shouldn't just be sitting in jail, right? You're not violent. You're not really hurting anybody, okay, to a certain extent. But if you've proven to be violent, trying to run over, right, your baby mama, why are you just able to post a little $1,000 bond and get out? Walk free on the streets. Guys, this is what progressives want. And I'm telling you, all across the country, there are progressive DAs running for office, right? Being funded by people like George Soros. This is not me making it up. These are facts, right? Soros is funding progressive DAs all across this country to implement policies just like this, to let criminals walk the street just like this that terrorize communities across this country, right? So again, when you got a progressive on the ballot, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system, this is what you're voting for. Right? I want you to understand that. Milwaukee County District Attorney John Crensham released a statement on Monday morning to say the bail recommendation was inappropriately low in light of his criminal record and the active charges against him. He said the bail recommendations were not consistent with the officer's approach on defendants facing violent crime charges, and he would be undertaking an internal review of the decision. Okay, so this is what they say every single time. Every single time they let one of these violent criminals out of jail on low bail, right? They say this. Well, we didn't mean it. This is not in line with our policies. No. It is in line with your policies. This is what you want, right? This is what progressive criminal justice want. This is what they do, right? It wasn't a mistake. This is what they meant, okay? because this is the new thing now. You can't keep people locked up, right? Even if they are violent. Mr. Brooks was also facing active charges of recklessly endangering safety and possession of a firearm as a felon in July 2020. In that case, bail was initially set to $10,000 before being reduced to $75,000. Mr. Brooks remained in custody until February 9th, 2021, when he was released on a $500 bail after the trial was delayed. Wow, this guy is getting out for basically pennies, right? Violent criminals getting out for pennies at a time. It's insane. He is also listed as a Tier 2 sexual offender on Nevada's sex offender registry for a 1996 conviction for statutory sexual seduction. Mr. Brooks was an amateur rapper who released several videos to YouTube under the stage name Math Boy Fly in a song named Half a Ticket, which was taken down by YouTube. Mr. Brooks' SUV appears on screen behind him. His songs frequently reference extreme violence and show automatic weapons, and he has threatened former presidents Donald Trump and Barack Obama in his lyrics. And since deleted social media accounts, Mr. Brooks describes himself as an underground hip-hop recording artist. I mean, he's not good, right? His music is pretty bad. Mr. Brooks had also been posted on social media about the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, which concluded in Kenosha on Friday, about 50 miles south of Waukesha. But police have ruled out any link to the Rittenhouse trial and said it was not a terrorism incident. Again, I got questions about that, right? And I know it's not the police that do this, okay? But the mainstream liberal media always wants to find anything having to do with the right, whether it's violence or not, as domestic terrorism, right? They say that white men, right, and white people, particularly conservatives, are the biggest domestic terror threat to this country, right? But every time you look, it's people like this guy, okay, that are committing the acts of terrorism, in my opinion. If this is not defined as act of terrorism, I don't know what is. Now, I read you guys the FBI's definition of what terrorism is, and they say it espouses extremist ideology, right? Acts that come from extremist ideologies. These rappers, in my opinion, guys, when you go out here and you talk about killing, stealing, robbing, committing crimes against your own community, against your own people, that to me is an extremist ideology, right? That's an extremist social ideology. So why are these rappers who are always talking about this, why are they not looked at as some of the biggest domestic terror threats in this country? Because this dude talks about this stuff. He went out there and did it, right? He's doing exactly what he talks about in his songs. But these people are not talked about as domestic terrorists by the mainstream liberal media, right? It's law-abiding citizens, like parents, right? Parents. But not guys like this. They tell you, don't worry about these folks, right? Worry about the parents protesting at the school boards. Guys, our mainstream media is garbage, trash. Police squads were seen outside Brooks' home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Sunday night, where his damaged SUV was parked in a driveway. 5 people aged 52 to 79, including 3 members of the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies, died, and 48 were injured after Mr. Brooks drove through police barricades and into the Christmas parade. So, yeah, guys, this is absolutely tragic, right? And the most tragic part about this, guys, is that this will not be talked about in probably a couple of days, right? I think the media will talk about it probably for another day or so max, but it's probably going to go from a national news story to a local news story as soon as the Ahmaud Arbery verdict comes out, especially if the verdict doesn't go the way that the mainstream liberal media wants it to go. It especially won't be talked about, right? And that's the sad part about this, because the victims of this tragedy definitely deserve to be highlighted on mainstream media. They deserve to have their names read, for people to know who they are, because their lives matter, right? That community lost a whole lot of wisdom that day, and it's just a shame that they're not going to talk about it, right? They're not. However, they'll talk all day about the victims of the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, right? And I use victims very, very loosely, right? The people who have extensive criminal histories. But this is kind of how our country operates now, guys. If you're a law-abiding citizen, right, you get nothing, right? You get screwed over. Nobody cares about you if you're a victim. But if you are a criminal, right, and you happen to be a victim or whatever, you get all the attention in the world. If you're somebody acting in self-defense, you're demonized as a white supremacist. However, again, if you're a criminal that runs over people at a Christmas parade, he was running from a knife fight, right? Or they just don't talk about it altogether. That's how our society works. Kamala Harris, the current vice president, visited Jacob Blake's family, right? Visited Jacob Blake's family and told Jacob Blake over the phone that she was proud of him, right? A career criminal. She said, I'm proud of you for resisting arrest. Come on now. I wonder if she's going to visit these victims, these people who were injured in this incident at the hospital. I highly doubt it. You know, Joe Biden already came out and said, well, you know, we need more information, right, about this, right? We need more information, not enough information, too early to tell. And it's funny how he didn't call Mr. Darrell Brooks a domestic terrorist, right off the bat, right off the rip. But it wasn't too early to call Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist, right? When he talked about that last year with no evidence. But like I said, I mean, if they do visit the hospital, if they actually do seem like they give a damn, I'll be the first person to congratulate them. But I highly doubt, highly doubt that will happen. I highly doubt it. Because, again, in our society, the way our country currently is, we reward the bad people and we demonize the good people, right? That's currently where we at in society. But like I said, man, you know, I am praying for the victims. And, you know, I hope this story is not swept under the rug. However, I think that it will be. Max, it'll be talked about for the next maybe 24 hours. After that, you won't hear about it again. But I hope I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.